People's perception of black women, that they are incapable of being upset or functioning, don't understand the role black women play in their family. This creates an issue. I have to work hard when I see the doctor to be taken seriously. They don't match my criteria because they don't have my experience. This is a stigma from health professionals. I have to prove I'm suffering. The process of getting help when you need help is so inaccessible.
Nobody wants to go to the health system for mental health because they think if they've been assigned to a mental health problem, they're going to have social services on their back. They're going to have all these people come in, like if you're a mother and you think you're labelled as not stable as a mother, if you have depression, anxiety, things like that, they feel like their children's going to be taken away.
I'm at an extreme risk of getting picked up by the police.
I remember one of my nephews was experiencing mental health issues and he actually booked himself into a hospital because he couldn't cope here. But the rest of the family were afraid. Like, they did not want him to do that because there was someone else who had had a previous mental health issue and they felt like it wasn't dealt with properly. So there was that issue and then they just tried to get him out of there as quickly as possible.
The challenges I faced was meeting the expectation of those around you, family dynamic, and the community dynamics of what people perceive you to be.
You feel everything is harder than usual as you carry all that pressure on you, as the men are supposed to be the go-getter, boss, you know?
I struggled with mainstream support systems and have gone my own way. A couple of years ago, I did go to the doctor and I didn't want to.
Speaking about my experience with the counsellor, I feel that I wasted that time, my time and public resources funding. I won't be going up to those sessions. It's a waste of money. I wasted the taxpayers' money because I didn't gain anything. Neither did they. They didn't achieve anything. It comes back down to the individual, you know, and obviously depends on the culture and faith they come from, and then willing to have those options available for them.
Often, the GP, there's a power balance. If clients have had a bad experience with GPs, or even maybe the receptionist in the GP, they're very likely not to go back.
Therapy is not for me. Because whoever I'm going to speak with doesn't know my needs perfectly, especially as someone who is an immigrant coming to the country. I have first to explain to the therapist my culture and the nuances of my culture before I start speaking about what bothers me about it.
Sometimes you may not want external people outside of your culture to be aware of your mental health. When you're talking to colleagues or friends outside of the culture, it's difficult to get them to understand where you're coming from.
The conversation around mental health is so whitewashed, you know what I mean? Even if it's not, then the message is not for an ethnic person. It's just like, oh, we're going to use the same messaging, but instead of putting a white person, we're going to want a person of color in those ads.
See, it's a different way to Western culture. We see it as a disgrace, a taboo. No one wants to go close to a person who has mental health issue. The stigma is too much.
Created by the white men. If it does exist, it means there's something spiritually wrong with you.
So I just felt like before everybody spoke, I just thought I was the only one who was going to mention that I was growing up in a culture where mental health didn't exist.
You're crazy. Or demonic. My mom used to say, I am the devil. You're dancing to the devil's tune. Or something like that. That's what she would say.
I know what they say. Always pray to God. God is always the answer. Well, I did that, but I felt like I still needed to talk to someone. But I could not because there was nobody to talk to, not even a counsellor to talk to you. Even when I go to school, there's no one that will advise you on depression or anything.
You're perceived as being lazy if you describe yourself as depressed.
You try and seek help because there isn't someone who looks like you, who understands your culture, who understands where you are coming from. It ultimately stops you from actually engaging with the services.
I found that community groups as a campaign run for a community by a community, that would be the best way to talk about myself.
My parents don't understand my mental health or emotional well-being. So it's hard to talk about my feeling to them. If I do openly discuss, they think I'm going mental, as there is no such place for depression in our culture.
BAME young people normally struggle to disclose mental health problems they have to family members and hide when accessing counseling sessions. These young people also often say service providers do not have cultural competency to deal with their needs.
Mental health problems come in different ways and with different drawbacks within asylum seekers and refugees living in Wales. My experience supporting these communities and my own community, and myself being an asylum seeker and now a refugee, is there are many losses, there are many changes, there are many challenges we face in this transition period when you claim asylum and when you finally get granted refugee status. If you add on top suffering from anxiety, depression, sadness, isolation, loneliness,